A career connected to music. I'm Lisa Oligas, and this is Newsmakers. The music industry is built on talent, dreams, resilience, and in many cases, connections. In this edition, we are welcoming a special guest all the way from Houston, Texas, to discuss a career that has spanned more than 5 decades. A member of the band Spirit in the 1970s, who is still recording albums and performing today. Our special guest is Staehely, a singer-songwriter and entertainment attorney. Welcome to Newsmakers, Al.
Thank you, Lisa. So happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, thank you for making the trip all the way up to see us. And we should also thank John McNerney of John and Houston PR, who helped make a connection for us, which is fantastic.
That's right. He's a great guy.
Yeah. You've been in the business decades, and you know better than most what it takes to make it. I want to start with a look at your life as an entertainment lawyer, though. We'll talk music later. Who do you typically represent?
Well, I guess my first client of significance in the entertainment field was Stevie Ray Vaughan. And gosh, over the years, sometimes it's artists, sometimes it's record companies, sometimes it's managers. So it depends. I've also represented Paul Kantner, who was with the Jefferson Airplane, Jefferson Starship.
You told me recently you have a case with Alice Cooper.
Oh, that's right. Actually, working on a case with for the Hollywood vampires that includes Alice Cooper, Johnny Depp, and Joe Perry from Aerosmith. And gosh, over the years, it's been so many things. And like I say, it's not always the artist, not always the company. It depends on who the client is. Yeah.
So what's the nature of entertainment law? So why does someone need an entertainment attorney? And, is it all about contracts or is it other things too?
Well, basically, when you're dealing with music, a lot of people don't realize that they realize that there's copyright. You're dealing with intellectual property is one of the aspects, which is a whole field in itself, because there's intellectual property, there's copyright in the song itself. But some people don't realize this sound recording, the album, it doesn't necessarily have to be an album, but the recording of the composition is referred to copyright law as a sound recording, and that is also copyrightable. So best exemplified, I guess, when the movie, well, for example, I represented, had a client that co-wrote a song with Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. It was used in the movie Battleship. They also wanted ZZ Top's version of the song in there. Okay. So the film had to get 2 licenses, one from the owner, or in this case, several owners of the composition, because there were several writers on the song. But then they also had to get license the rights to the sound recording of ZZ Top's version of that. So if you've ever been to a film or where you hear a song that you know and you think, oh, this is so-and-so song, and then you listen more carefully and you notice it's not really the original version, it's somebody else. That's somebody, namely the filmmakers, trying to save money. They paid somebody to do a re-recording of the song, and under their deal with them, they own the sound recording. That way they only have to pay the big money to the writers of the composition.
Wow, interesting.
I'm getting too far in the weeds already.
Yeah, well, so your clients can include musicians, artists. How does your job differ than being an agent, though?
Very different. A booking, well, in the music business, the agent is responsible for keeping the act working, getting live performances or television performances or whatever. The attorney, there's music business, there's the agents, there's the managers, and they're responsible for the coordinating everyone, working with the record company, the booking agents, the record producers, the record companies, trying to get everybody in sync with each other. For example, if you got a new album coming out, you want the agent to book a tour for them to promote the record. And you want all that to be you want the release date coordinated. in a perfect world with maybe a single release first. So agent is very specific just to getting the gigs. A lawyer is doing the contracts between all these record contracts, publishing contracts, licensing, deals with the merchandising companies. There's rights, there's all kinds of deals like that.
How common are legal battles? I mean, and how, is it copyright infringement? What are some of the things? I know Miley Cyrus right now is fighting the courts over the song Flower. She was being sued allegedly for copying aspects of the Bruno Mars song, not by Bruno, but somebody who was a writer on the song. So how often does that kind of thing happen?
Well, it seems like there's always somebody suing somebody about that, but typically they're not going to do it unless it's a big song. In other words, if somebody samples somebody else's song and it's just kind of, I don't know, 150 people hear it or something, they might get a cease and desist letter, but it's not worth maybe spending the money to sue them. But if there's big...
she had a big hit.
If it's a big hit, then you're going to be... somebody's going to be looking to say, in fact, I've had plenty of calls from people just unsolicited saying, somebody recorded my song or did my song. And I said, well, wait a minute, has your song ever even been released yet? No, but I know they heard it because, first of all, to prove a copyright case, you have to have the similarity, but you also have to have access, some way of hearing it. Well, at any rate, so
people would like to sue for it. Well, you have a practice, and you've taught entertainment law, business law, music business, publishing. What is the biggest challenge you see in the industry today?
Today is adjusting, and we're still adjusting to the digital world. Anytime there's new technology, the copyright laws and the business follow behind. And that's happened since the beginning of music. I mean, when radio came in, music publishers, owners of songs, songwriters thought the fact that people could hear the music on the radio would make invaluable or make not valuable their music because people could hear it on the radio.
They wouldn't need to buy the record,
Yeah, it's that now, I mean, of course, it turns out that later in the music business, record companies were paying radio promotion men thousands of dollars to get their record played on the radio.
And many artists now are like on TikTok, and they're basically giving it away for free. So how do the artists transition from that to getting a record deal, so to speak?
You know what? So many artists don't even want a record deal these days. If they're good at their own promotion, and so many of the young artists, they've grown up with social media. They know how to do you got to keep the algorithm, you got to feed the algorithm and post constantly and try to find something that clicks, and the Instagram, the whole thing. And if you can, it's all about gathering your community and your fans. That major labels, only thing they can give you now pretty much is a boost or a whole lot of money. They're not interested usually unless they're sitting watching you do it on your own till it gets to a certain point. I used to be, years ago, I would shop demos of acts to record companies. Now I wouldn't bother doing that because they're waiting for you to get it, go into a certain level yourself. Then they want to jump in and say, well, we can take you to the next level, but and so by the time they come in, sometimes these artists, they're making more money without the major label than they would with the major label.
I mean, and how are they making money? I mean, is it because they're, when you get Spotify, you're paying a certain fee, but how much does an artist really get out of that?
Well, and that depends. Okay, are they writing their own songs? Because the money flows to songwriters, and do they own their own songs? and do they own, then if they're making their own records, they also own the sound recordings. So those are all different income streams. And if they control and own all of those income streams, then they're not giving them away to a publisher or to a record company.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying that works for everybody, but
Right.
I'm just saying those who figure it all out and are good enough and write their own songs, there's more money in the songwriting really than, as a rule of thumb, than there is in being the recording artist.
Well, you're a songwriter, a musician, and an attorney. Which came first, and how do they work together?
Well, what came first? Being an attorney came way later. I started playing in bands. I grew up in Austin, Texas. Played in bands in high school. Then I went to the University of Texas. I played in another band, and those were the days when UT was a, you know, it still is a big university with lots of fraternities. I mean, yeah, they had clubs, and we played some of the clubs, but the frat scene was where the good money was. Every weekend they had parties, and they always had live bands. They didn't have DJs do their bands. That would have been, people wouldn't have wanted to go to a party that didn't have a live band. But in a way, that's the unfortunate thing about Austin has now created this image of live music capital of the world. But a lot of the reason that bands came there and to work was because of the good money on weekends.
Yeah.
And I don't know that exists in the same way it did then.
Well, we're going to take a deep dive into your music next. Can you play us into the break?
Okay. Well, here's the first song on my recent album, Somewhere in West Texas. Something good is gonna.
We're going to be right back.
Something good is gonna happen. I can feel it in there. Something good is gonna happen. When it does, I'm gonna be there. 'Cause I can feel my luck changing, even though it ain't changed yet. My heart is like that wheel of fortune. Step right up, I'll take all bets.
Welcome back to Newsmakers, where we are exploring the world of making music with singer-songwriter and entertainment lawyer Al Staehely. Thanks again for making the trip up from Houston.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So it's time to talk your music career, which started even when you were a kid, but we just heard the song, Something Good Is Gonna Happen. So you said there's a story behind that song. Tell it to us.
Well, you know, some people think that, and it's a logical thought, that songwriters write happy songs when they're happy, sad songs when they're sad, and sometimes that is the case. But in this case, years ago, this is still during my time in LA, a girlfriend of mine, and we'd been together for several years, and we were breaking up, and it was kind of sad. And but I went back to the apartment to kind of get a few things, and I said, I wrote a new song, and I don't know if you want to hear it. And she said, well, I guess so. So I said, well, okay. So I started in as, something good is gonna happen. I can fit. And I don't think she was amused. I don't think that was, I bet I'll find a girl who loves me. All that, not the kind of song I think she was expecting. But
She thought you were singing sad breakup song.
But sometimes I would write songs to cheer myself up, even though instead of talking about the sad event, you know.
How young were you when you first started learning instruments and playing music?
I think I was, gosh, I know when I was. It was like the 8th grade, and it was really because I'd always I played baseball, played golf, I played sandlot football, and I wanted to go out for football in the 8th grade, but out in the summer heat, baseball, golf, caddying, doing all this stuff, and I guess I didn't drink enough water, got a dehydrated kidney, and the doctor said, no, you can't go out for football. at least not this year. You can't do anything too strenuous. And
Yeah.
my cousin had a guitar brought up. He showed me one song, a Ricky Nelson song. Remember
Oh,
that?
wow.
Poor Little Fool, I think it was. Anyway, he taught to me, and then so I started fooling around with it. I took a few guitar lessons, and anyway, I started. By the time I was in high school, I had a little band, and band through college, band through law school, and at that point, I said, "Okay, I'm going to give this music thing a try for a while." So I didn't practice a day of law in my life till almost 10 years after I got out of law school.
Isn't that funny? And so you went to LA.
Yeah.
And you kind of walked into a band that needed some people after
I got
they
real
lost.
lucky at first. Actually, it happened because the drummer in the band, the last band I was in Texas, had gone out before me. And he was joining up with two guys who were leaving Spirit to start another band. And so they introduced me to the remaining members of Spirit, and I worked with them for a few, and they asked me to join the band. And so I walked right in the middle of a band who already had a pretty big reputation. And
They had a big song. What was the song?
well, they had I Got a Line on You and Nature's Way. I still do Nature's Way, and sometimes I Got a Line on You, because I was, those were almost the only, those are two out of the only three songs, the past songs when I joined the band, that we kept doing. Otherwise, we're doing the songs that I wrote and a couple that the keyboard player wrote. And those are both great songs. Randy California was the writer of those, the two songs.
So Spirit was originally acclaimed as, kind of a rock band, and now you're country. So how was that? Was there a transition there? You and your brother, played. Your brother was part of Spirit too, right?
Yeah. Well, I got him in when Randy left. Randy was in the band, but before we recorded the next album, he left, and my brother was in a band called Cracker Jack in Austin, Texas, with Tommy Shannon and Uncle John Turner, who'd been the rhythm section for Johnny Winter. And so I invited him out. He came to visit, came over and rehearsed, and the guys invited him to join immediately. And so he joined not too long before we did the album Feedback. And on that album, I wrote 7 of the songs, and John Locke, the keyboard player, wrote 2. And next thing I knew, but I hadn't been out in LA a full year, and we were headlining Carnegie Hall.
Cool.
So, but when the band broke up a couple of years later, my brother and I did an album for Epic Records as the Staehely brothers. But that's where, as I sometimes tell my clients, I learned the value of a trademark and a name, because even though same guys they'd been seeing for a couple of years fronting the band Spirit, we didn't have the name Spirit anymore, and so we couldn't really, the booking agents couldn't book us a tour that could even make sense.
Yeah. So, but you did go on tour, and so was that with a different band or with Spirit? And tell me about the touring experience. You even went overseas, right?
Well, during the rest of the 70s, I wrote songs that other people did. Keith Moon, the drummer for The Who, did one solo album ever. And I wrote the first song on the album called Crazy Like a Fox. And then they asked me to, actually, that was interesting. I don't know how much you want to hear about the Keith Moon thing, but Mal Evans was the producer. Now, you probably don't know, but Beatle maniacs will know who Mal Evans is. He was the roadie for the Beatles in all the Beatle movies. He was the big guy, blonde hair with horn-rimmed glasses walking around. And he was the producer of the album. Well, I played him a song, Crazy Like a Fox. They were going to be recording over at the record plant. And he said, oh, this was on a Wednesday. He said, I could hear Keith doing that. We'll do it on Friday. I said, okay. I said, do you have all the musicians for the session? He said, no. I said, well, my brother is playing. I said, of course, I know the song, but also my brother's plays with JoJo Gunn. That was the band that he joined. And he knows the song. Well, why don't we get all of JoJo Gunn to play? So I'm on the phone to the guys, you want to play on the Keith Moon session on
Cool.
Friday? Yes. And so we go down there. And so I was sitting next to me, I was playing acoustic six string. Sitting next to me was Spencer Davis, who I didn't know was coming.
Yeah.
If you remember from the Spencer Davis group.
Yeah.
And Jesse Ed Davis, who was the guy that played Dr. My Eyes, that's a famous solo in Dr. My Eyes. But he and my brother were playing electric, and actually the solo that ended up on the Keith Moon record was my brother's solo. And Keith on one set of drums, and Curly Smith, a drummer for JoJo Gunna, and all playing at the same time, which is not the usual way you cut a basic track. And they invited me back to play. I played on about half the album, and Ringo Starr came down one day, and got to meet Ringo and all that.
So you've continued playing with all kinds of music, and you've done a lot of songwriting. You have a Dwight Yoakam story. Tell me a little bit. I mean, you've had some other brushes with people who, even before, I mean, you've done this so long, it's before they were great, right?
Yeah, well, Dwight was in LA and was playing a club, and a friend of mine said, oh, you got to hear this guy. We went down and heard him, and I said, man, this guy was really good. And that's when he had Pete Anderson playing guitar with him, who produced those early albums, which I really love those first album or two that Pete Anderson produced and played. And then, like I said,
He was nobody then at that time.
well,
not
no,
really.
he was starting to, that's, you know, it was a little odd moment out in LA. Some of the punk bands were embracing traditional country music as opposed to the post-urban cowboy pop crossover country stuff. And because he was such a traditional kind of country music type writer and player, that scene kind of, they came to his shows too. So he was starting to build following, but he didn't really happen out of Nashville. That was the kind of the irony. He started happening out of LA.
That's cool. We featured a number of your videos on our show, Beyond Billboard Hits. What do you like about making videos?
Well, I don't know. I hadn't done that many of them, but it depends on, I don't know, it's a performance, and you know, I like to have fun in music and fun in videos, and especially if you're working with somebody that knows what they're doing, like the young man Charlie Schwan, who directed the Something Good Is Gonna Happen video and Mercy of the Moon video. Both of those songs are on the Somewhere in West Texas album. And this is a young man that grew up in Austin. I've known him since he was a kid. He went to University of Texas Film School. He grew up with Robert Rodriguez's kids. And because his dad was a stunt man and a stunt coordinator for productions going on in Austin. So Charlie grew up around the business a little bit, around the, and then for his senior year, they had to do a project, and it was a video, not a video, but a film short.
Right.
He called me one day and said, hey, you know, I've written this film short that takes place in the 70s, and I know you had a lot of music you wrote during that time. Maybe, do you have some music I could maybe use? And I said, well, I gave him, let him into my Dropbox. I said, just look around. If anything you find, feel free to use. And he ended up using 3 or 4 of my things, and then one of a great song that my son had written and produced, but I had in the Dropbox, which I think was probably better than anything that I wrote, he used. And so between me and my son, we did the whole soundtrack for this whole film short. And so and the film came out and was accepted in the Tribeca Film Festival in New York, and which is kind of an honor. And then it won Best Student Film at the Crested Butte Film Festival. And so we if you go to Spotify under Al Staehely, we released a little
clip of it,
little EP kind of soundtrack from the film short.
Yeah.
So at any rate,
Your latest album has band members listed on the front. I want you talk about the fact that you work with a lot of really neat musical people. Kind of briefly talk about, who those are and why that was important to you.
Well, actually, I think I mentioned to you when we were talking earlier, is that whole album was a bit of an accident. Like Fran Christina, who was the drummer from the Fabulous Thunderbirds that you remember on Tough Enough and all those records they had out. But he now lives in Marfa, Texas, and with his wife, Julie Speed, who is a well-known painter, and really doesn't go on the road anymore. But he had been my client when he left the Fabulous Thunderbirds, so I represented him in disentangling him from the Fabulous Thunderbirds, but we'd never made any music together. But we have a place, not in Marfa, but about 45 minutes down the road in Marathon, Texas, closest entrance to Big Bend National Park. And during the pandemic, everything was shut down. And we were out there for a month, and I was saying, I got all these songs I keep saying I'm going to record. I don't even have demos of them. And I know Fran lives in Marfa. I know Scrappy Judd Newcomb. He's got a place in Marfa. He's a great guitar player who's been around Austin and played on so many records.
So you guys just all kind of got together and
well, I call it, and yeah, I was just intending to do demos. I called them. I said, I heard there's a studio in Marfa, right? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, let me just send you guitar vocals of 6 songs and just go in. I just want to do some demos. And they said, okay. And then Scrappy said, oh, by the way, Chris Marish has come into town to do another session with me. And he's a great bass player from Austin. I knew he and Scrap had played together. And I said, see if he wants to play bass, because even though I'm a bass player, I don't want to play bass. I want to play rhythm guitar. Yeah. So we went in the studio. We had one rehearsal, went in and recorded 6 songs in one day. Of course, we had to do some overdubs other days, but like I said, if we had thought we were doing an album, it probably wouldn't have feel so much fun and so relaxed and loose, because we would have gotten too precious with it.
Keeps music exciting.
And those guys really are the ones that, after the session was over, said, these are really good songs. You ought to come back with 5 or 6 more.
And now you've got an album. Now you got
6 weeks later, I went back and we did it.
Well, Al, it's been so great talking to you. I wish we had more time, but thank you for sharing all your insights and your career with us. And we know we're going to be seeing you on our other show, Behind the Band. So
that's right.
Thanks for being here. Continued
success.
Having me. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
That wraps up this edition of Newsmakers. You can also learn more about Al's music and hear him perform on our show, Behind the Bands. Thanks to Al for traveling from Houston to share his story, and thank you for watching Newsmakers.